Start. Today we'll be covering Canto 1, Chapter 9, text number 9. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So again, we're in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, text number 9. So I'll read the verse word by word translation purport. Tan sametan mahabhagan upalabhya vasutama pujayam asha dharmagyo desha kala vibhagavit. So word for word. Tan, all of them. Sametan, assembled together. Mahabhagan, all greatly powerful. Upalabhya, having received. Vasu Uttama, the best among the Vasus, Bhishma Dev. Pujayam Asa, welcomed. Dharma Gya, one who knows religious principles. Desha, place. Kala, time. Vibhagavit, one who knows the adjustment of place and time. Translation. Bhishma Dev, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. Purport. Expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world, and if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of the time and place. Bhishma Dev was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this call to devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically, because he was neither at his home nor in a normal, healthy condition. But he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words. And he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminati Namine. So, just to revisit the context of this part of the Bhagavatam that we're in. So Krishna was just about to leave Hastinapur. He had actually just finished hearing Queen Kunti's beautiful prayers, and then Yudhishthira Maharaj enters the assembly and he starts to address everyone present. And he says that, and he's expressing his disturbance at having killed so many family and friends, very similar to Arjuna's initial, disturbance in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. And so in this state, he goes back to the battlefield of Kurukshetra and he sees Bhishma Dev there lying on a bed of arrows. And so Yudhishthira approaches Bhishma Dev, and so many exalted personalities arrive there, assembled. These were the verses that were just prior to this, today's verse. So many great exalted personalities also approach because they understand that Bhishma Dev is a very senior devotee of the Lord, and they would like to hear his dying words. And so looking at Prabhupada's commentary here, I just wanted to point out just a few main points that I thought were worth considering discussing a little bit further. So one thing is that Prabhupada says, and this is a quote from the purport, he says that all the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. Now, this is a huge statement. I can't help but wonder whether Prabhupada is also indirectly pointing out himself and even his own spiritual master, who made very great adjustments for the sake of propagating Krishna consciousness all across the world. I mean, Prabhupada is the first in our whole line of disciplic succession to really take Krishna consciousness beyond the boundaries of India and establish it very firmly all across the world. And so he's talking about Bhishma Dev here as an example of one such personality who exemplified this principle of doing whatever it takes to spread this awareness of Krishna consciousness. And he's also just making a broader statement that in order to spread the cult of Krishna consciousness, it does take such an approach. One needs to be willing and able to adjust he says, just to use Prabhupada's words, all the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. And I feel like a whole seminar could be given on what constitutes what is okay to adjust, right? And that is why Prabhupada is considered acharya, because the acharya is one who has the ability to adjust the religious principles according to time and place, while still keeping the essence of this Krishna consciousness movement. So this is one important point that Prabhupada is discussing here. And he's mentioning how Bhishma Dev was also one such person that was able to do this. Now, another point is that he mentions how Bhishma Dev was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service. So this statement, Prabhupada is referring to the 12 great Mahajanas, these are 12 great devotees of Vishnu, and Bhishma is one of them. And so I just wanted to read, there's a verse later on in Bhagavatam in Canto 6, where Yamaraj is actually speaking. And he's speaking to the Yamadutas, because the Yamadutas, they had just tried to bring Ajamala to the hellish planets, and they were thwarted by the Vishnu Dutas. So then they come back and they are very confused. They're very genuine, and they mention to Yamaraj that we thought that you were the Supreme Lord. We thought that you were the ultimate authority in the universe. But we're seeing that these beautiful personalities, these Vishnu Dutas, they were their order was higher than ours. So we want to understand, are you the supreme authority? Or if not, who is the supreme authority? So Yamaraj starts to explain how he is not the supreme authority. He's very satisfied by hearing the Yamadutas expressed this way. And he starts to explain to them that all the demigods are under the control of the Supreme Lord. And then he begins to explain who are those personalities that actually dispel, if that's the right word, who are the actual personalities that propagate the truth of Krishna consciousness, essentially. And so then he speaks this verse. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 3, text 20 and 21. I'll just recite it and read the translation and a little bit of the purport. It's very relevant. So yeah, this is Yamaraj speaking. He says, Swayambhur Narada Sambhu Kumara Kapilo Manu Pralado Janako Bhishmo Balir Vaya Sakir Vayam Vadashaite vijanimo dharmam bhagavatam vata guhyam vishuddham durbodham yam gyatva mritam ashnute. Translation: Lord Brahma, Bhagavan Narada, Lord Shiva, the four Kumaras, Lord Kapila, the son of Devahuti, Swayambhuva Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, Grandfather Bhishma, Bali Maharaj, Shukadev Goswami, and I, Yamaraj. So these personalities know the real religious principle. My dear servants, this transcendental religious principle, which is known as Bhagavat Dharma, or surrender unto the Supreme Lord and love for him, is uncontaminated by the material modes of nature. It is very confidential and difficult for ordinary human beings to understand, but if by chance one fortunately understands it, he is immediately liberated, and thus he returns home back to Godhead. And I'll just read a little bit of Prabhupada's purport here. He's just expanding on this principle of, what are the Mahajanas all about. So he says, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna refers to Bhagavat Dharma as the most confidential religious principle. Sarva guhyatamam guhyad guhyataram. Krishna says to Arjuna, because you are my very dear friend, I am explaining to you the most confidential religion. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all other duties and surrender unto me. One may ask, if this principle is very rarely understood, what is the use of it? In answer, Yamaraj states herein that this religious principle is understandable if one follows the parampara system of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, the four Kumaras, and the other standard authorities. And then I won't read the rest of the purport, but Prabhupada starts to outline what the different sampradayas are and how one should be associated with one of these sampradayas in order to be considered a genuine follower of Bhagavad Dharma. And Bhishma Dev is one of the 12 Mahajanas who propagate this Bhagavad Dharma under this bona fide disciplic succession family that we have. So this is the context of a little bit of context around who the 12 Mahajanas are and what their role is. And so finally, just one final point that I wanted to highlight from Prabhupada's purport from our verse from today is that he's pointing out how Bhishma Dev is obviously physically challenged at this time. He's on a bed of arrows. I mean, I can't imagine the physical pain that a person would feel in such a situation. But Bhishma Dev has complete self-control, and he sees all of these. He has complete awareness, and he sees all of the great exalted personalities who are present. Yudhishthira Maharaj, along with so many other personalities. Krishna himself is there. And so Prabhupada makes this point about how, despite his physical limitation, Bhishma was able to welcome all the assembled sages with sweet words and expressions. And he says that one can perform one's duties by physical work, by mind, and by words. And so, this statement, Prabhupada doesn't elaborate it on that particular statement any further in the purport, but my understanding of this statement is that there are these different aspects of performing one's duty. There's obviously the physical action of doing one's duty, but also the mind and words play into the successful fulfillment of one's duty. So just because someone does the physical action, but if their mind and their words aren't tied in with that physical action, let's say, for example, if a guest is visiting my house and I do all of the physical rituals, right? I bring them in, I invite them in very nicely, I offer them some water to drink, a place to sit, I exchange pleasantries, I ask them, how are you? How is your family? I can smile and laugh. But internally, if I don't like this person, if my whole mental state is, oh gosh, why did this person even have to come to my house right now? I have so many things that are more important to me. Or if my words are not in line with my action, then what is the legitimacy of the action? I was actually attending a retreat just this past weekend, and there's one devotee. I'm forgetting his spiritual name right now, but his birth name is Simon Haas. He wrote this book called the Book of Dharma, and in his book he kind of expands on these principles. There's 4 primary principles of Dharma, and he also just makes this point about how in order to be considered acting completely dharmically, one's actions, words, and mind or thoughts should be in line. And so Bhishma Dev is an example of a completely dharmic personality who, we're seeing at the time of his death here, his body is completely limited, yet he's fully aware and understanding of how to, he's completely aware of how to receive the great personalities through his words and through his meaningful gestures of appreciation and gratitude. So obviously we all understand that Bhishma Dev is a very exalted devotee and a great example. And going further into the Bhagavatam, further into this chapter, we will get to hear Bhishma Dev's beautiful prayers as he's about to depart this world. So these were the few main points that I wanted to highlight from the purport today. If anyone has any comments or corrections or questions to add to that, that would be very wonderful. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay, going once, going twice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for laying out how the Mahajanas and what is the role of the Mahajanas and the importance of the parampara. I was just curious, Prabhuji, if the Mahajanas are, basically they are the ones who established, I wouldn't say established, I think I'm trying to find the right word for the Sanatan, for the Bhagavad Dharma.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the connection between the parampara and the Mahajanas.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, what is that connection I'm trying to see? Right. For example, we have the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas.
Right.
Now, what is the role of these Mahajanas and or maybe within our parampara, what is the connection, at least, to the Mahajanas, right?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because I was also reading this. So this verse that I was quoting, this Canto 6, Chapter 3, text 20 and 21, Prabhupada does immediately after explaining how, he's connecting how these 12 Mahajanas are all propagators of this Bhagavad Dharma. But then he starts to explain there are 4 lines of disciplic succession, one from Lord Brahma, one from Lord Shiva, Lakshmi, and the Kumaras. But he doesn't actually explain in the purport exactly how these 12 Mahajanas fall into those parampara systems. So I don't know where in these disciplic successions the Mahajanas fall. But the only thing that we can understand just by the context is that they do fall into the parampara, but it's not explained in detail, at least in this section, which sampradayas they're part of. But that would be interesting. If anybody has that information or knows where that can be found, that would be interesting to see.
Yes, Prabhuji. Obviously, Brahma is the origin of our sampradaya. I was just thinking
Right.
about Bhisma and whatnot.
Yes. Yeah. The first four that Prabhupada mentions is Brahma, he mentions Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Kumaras, Kapila. So these are all, Kumaras, Shiva, and Narada, or Brahma are, we understand where they are, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Question. Yeah. Okay. Maybe there's no other questions or comments, so we can stop there.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much. Your classes are always crisp and to the point and very significant points. I was thinking about this for some time. Monila Prabhu was discussing about it the other day, how there can be, multiple right things based on the source of information. As you're bringing up this Yamadutas, thinking their master is the supreme, and how come there is somebody else? So I was thinking about, particularly for our congregation, we have different spiritual masters, different mentors. So at times, the kind of guidance we are receiving, that may seem different. Of course, it again depends on the particular circumstance we are in. Even the same spiritual master may actually, give us the different kind of guidance. I have been contemplating on it, just sharing here as, that point about Yamadharmaraj versus Vishnu, that context came.
Yeah.
Just would you like to share some thoughts? How do we, integrate and still work together in spite of different guidances? Not going into, no, this is the guidance I have received, this is the absolute, and whatever you're saying, the other thing is not right.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously a huge endeavor. It's always a huge endeavor to find, you could say, like a common source of truth in any given congregation. And like you said, because there are so many devotees that may have different spiritual masters that may be giving different types of guidance. I mean, one thought that immediately came to mind is that there's sometimes this ongoing debate about the, you could say, like the usefulness of particularly Prabhupada's letters in today's context. Prabhupada wrote so many letters, as we know, to so many different disciples. And so then and you often see devotees may quote a letter from Prabhupada in order to establish, in order to establish some type of truth, some type of universal truth, when in actuality, the majority of Prabhupada's letters were written to specific disciples under specific time, place, circumstances. And in context of this idea of time, place, circumstance, Prabhupada himself, in the verse that we were reading today, he was expressing how the propagators of this Krishna consciousness movement all throughout history, they make adjustments according to time, place, and circumstance. So if we apply that to, now Prabhupada is no longer here. Now we have our individual spiritual masters, and sometimes there can be like a disconnect. But I'm like a very, I feel so silly even speaking to all of you who are senior to me, but from my observation, it seems like there needs to be I feel that there needs to be a delineation between what is considered like managerial advice versus spiritual advice. Because if a spiritual master is giving their disciple straight guidance on how to practice their sadhana, nobody else can have any say on that. You know, even if we say that ISKCON's standard for initiation is that one must chant 16 rounds. But if one spiritual master tells their disciple, you just chant 8 rounds, then nobody else can say anything about that because it's between the guru and the disciple. And so while that may not be the quote unquote ISKCON standard, there's spiritual guidance that can be given between the guru and disciple that nobody else has any authority to comment on, actually. And so as far as spiritual guidance is concerned, I think that people need to maybe mind their own lane in the sense that it's between your guru and your disciple to determine what is the best course of action. But managerial situations can get a little confusing, and I don't know if I even have an answer to navigating discrepancies, and if one manager is saying to do one thing, another one's saying to do another thing. But I think that's why ISKCON has this system of GBC, and we have, for example, Anuttama Prabhu as GBC, and so yeah, I just think that there's a realm of not, I'm using the word material because it's in relation to management, but there's a realm of management ISKCON and there's a realm of spiritual ISKCON. And so I feel that particularly in regards to sadhana practices, guru disciple, they have their relationship for a reason. So I don't know if that addresses, but
yeah, sure,
yeah.
Prabhu. Thank you, that helps. As you're speaking, this thing was coming to me. How we will be able to reach there is probably with the maturity and also understanding the common purpose, why we are doing whatever we are doing. When especially as you have brought up Prabhupada's position, being the second and third generations, we may actually lose the context in which he's speaking certain things.
Yeah.
We may take those statements absolutely and say, oh, Srila Prabhupada said that's what it is, without thinking of the context. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mukunda Prabhu, thank you so much for the beautiful explanation. I really love the way how you separated out the spiritual guidance and the managerial aspect of ISKCON and how to be cognizant of both of that. That was really profound, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda, please.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Obeisances all for us. Srila Prabhu, Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. It's very nice your lecture. While I was just the different sampradayas. For example, in Sri Sampradaya, just trying to have a good guess about what's going on there. It's all about the goal is Lord Vishnu, and we are pretty clear how our Sampradaya goes. And we can also have a glimpse into Sri Sampradaya, because only difference is Lakshmi Narayan worship there, and it's pretty much parallel to ours. But I'm trying to have a guess at least about what Rudra Sampradaya would be like, because Lord Shiva, I have not heard about any teachings of Lord Shiva that is about Lord Vishnu. Of course, we have Bhagavatam. He glorifies the Lord, and then So I was wondering, maybe you could probably research and present us one bird's eye view of what is the Rudra Sampradaya and Kumara Sampradaya. I know you are a repository of so much knowledge. Yes. You can also tell us sometime in the future. What is that Rudra Sampradaya? Sampradaya.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, every time that I read about Lord Shiva, I'm just baffled because there's so much, like Lord Shiva is such a unique personality. He's not Jiva Tattva, he's not Vishnu Tattva. Lord Shiva is his own category of reality, meaning that even Brahma is considered a Jiva. Vishnu is obviously, Krishna, but then Shiva is a different category. And we hear that there's that verse how Lord, I forget the exact analogy, but it's like if Vishnu is like milk, then Lord Shiva is like yogurt, or there's this transformation that equates to Lord Shiva. So, and I also actually I just read this section from the first part of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Narada is going and he's trying to find who is the highest devotee of the Lord, and he comes across Lord Shiva, and there's so much explanation in that section of how Lord Shiva is like Lord Vishnu, but he simultaneously is not. And so I don't have an answer to your question, unfortunately. And every time I read about Lord Shiva, I wish somebody, I feel like someone needs to do a whole, I'm sure these exist already, but a whole seminar needs to be done on who is Lord Shiva, because he's also the greatest devotee of the Lord who we cannot overlook.
Yeah.
And so I am completely confounded by who Lord Shiva is. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear only about Lord Shiva devotees, but Lord Shiva teaching Vishnu Sampradaya, and that sort of is very, not at all come across something like that.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about it.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone has that background, I've heard that there's like I don't know if it's a Shiva Purana. I don't know, but there are some scriptures that are dedicated to Lord Shiva, and also of course we've heard pastimes where Lord Shiva is obvious. I mean, in the Bhagavatam, so much we have heard of Lord Shiva glorifying Lord Vishnu.
Yeah.
And we've even heard of Lord Shiva trying to enter the rasa dance of Lord Krishna. So we understand that he's a devotee. There's no doubt there. But I agree. We need. It would be helpful to understand more about a place where Lord Shiva glorifies Lord Vishnu.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we can wrap up there. Okay. Thank you all very much for joining. And I apologize if I didn't speak anything correct or just spoke from my own concoctions. So if anyone has any corrections later, please let me know. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.